I joined the young lady over there, and I also don't have the Facebook app. What is it? The latest report, 58 minutes out of most people's day is spent on Facebook. Imagine the productivity if most of us didn't have the app. So I deleted the app, and I feel like I'm reading a lot more books. I feel like it's more palatable. I can now consume the 60 books that I say that I want to consume in 2016. And if you look at the reports, not to attack what he's saying because there's a lot of validity in everything that he said, I think a lot of people are getting away from the app because it's so easy to wake up and immediately dive into it. If I have to get on Facebook, I'll use the desktop. But anyway, I hate that picture. I was in Destin, Florida recently for vacation, and I was talking to a jeweler. I wasn't looking to buy jewelry. I have this weird fascination with retail stores or e-commerce stores or brands, and she was selling high-end men's and women's wear, bags, luxury items, and I said, you know, your business is obviously doing well. How are you doing online? And she immediately launched into how complicated it is for her to learn enough to stay vibrant enough in this online marketplace. And here it is, I'm thinking, wow, she's making money, you know, through the roof. I mean, living in Destin, living in the house that she described she lived in. And so for me, I immediately realized that the world we live in as marketers is so divorced from the world of the people who are actually at the brand level, who are actually doing the work. And so I thought about this image. This image immediately popped into my head because I'd seen it before. And as I built this deck out, I think a lot of people who work in brands, including many of us in this room, see marketing in this way, that it's an albatross and we don't recognize it. And so I came away, when I began, this was the image I had in my head of her store, which literally sat across from the beach. And then when I walked away, I had this image because she really highlighted just how unmanageable online marketing can be. And it really opened my eyes to something that I see all the time and I think about all the time, that, you know, as marketers and consultants and as people who from a day-to-day interact with brands who aren't always doing the work, it's really confusing. What we see isn't reality, so to speak. So that's what I'm going to talk about today. What I'm going to talk about, and I'll get in a second, is where we need to be going. And so what I'd like to say is similar to what I said yesterday. If you can take one thing from each talk and put it to use, you will be far more successful than anybody else. Because most people are going to listen to me or anybody else, and they're going to walk away and be even more befuddled. They're going to walk away and say, "Oh, this is so difficult." And as I said yesterday, somebody's going to do it. Why not you? So this is a study that was done by Adobe a few years ago, and it highlighted how most marketers feel. One of the #1 terms that continued to come up was overwhelmed, and I think that's you know, based on what we see and what we say. I mean, think about the breadth of information you've heard just in this room. It can be so confusing. Some of it, you know, it's kind of a mixed message. And what I want us to do is focus on, quote unquote, what we're good at. Again, highlights marketing research that the terms that people are using. As you go through this, you'll see, and it's really interesting. This research, Adobe, social media marketing. Now, nothing against social media. I love social media, but if that's where your main focus is, you're not going to win. I would just put that out there. With rare exception, your focus should not be on social media marketing at the exclusion of these other channels. And that's really, really problematic. Many of us are hearing about social media, have heard about social media, and a lot of us are continuing to work in that medium and learn more and more about it and dive deeper. I'd love to see content marketing be a lot more of a focus, specifically if we're going to be in marketing and as we're going, whether we think it's important or not. Building a brand is something we can't get away from anymore, and we're going to talk a little more about that with some depth. So a few years ago, I was at MozCon, the brand that I work for puts on this show, and I was like you. I was one of 1,600 people in a room, and I was fairly new to content marketing, and was my first quote-unquote SEO conference. And again, I just said, you know, if I can walk away with one thing, I'll be satisfied. And so at the end of the show, they asked Avinash Kaushik, who I talked about yesterday, they asked him one question as he's walking off the stage. And Avinash, who if you've heard him speak, he's amazing, but he curses a lot. So I had to paraphrase what he said. But he said, stop stop thinking about all the things you're not going to be able to do. Think about what you can do today and get good at that. And that's so powerful. That spoke to me nearly 4 years ago. It's so powerful. It's so simple, and it's become instructive for my career. Because so many times, we were talking about tools yesterday, there's all this information, there's all these platforms we need to be on. We don't have to be on Facebook. You don't. If that's not where you want your audience to be, and you're not going to devote the time there, don't pull them there if you're not going to devote the resources to it. And that's how I feel. My family is whether they're there or not, I'm not going to be, and so I have to train them. I'm not going to be on Facebook. I'm going to try to get good at what it is that I do. Whatever it is, it's not going to be Facebook. And so, to me, our past contains some clues to the future. There's a lot of things that happened last year that are significant, and as I go forward, I want to highlight some things that happened last year that were very significant, and that we should continue to focus on. So last year was when 2015 was when tweets went organic. So it means we needed to be even more cognizant of the things that we share, because it's likely going to show up in organic search if we tweet it. So people can just put our name in. I remember at one point my name would show up very high for ESPN. Now it's my tweets that show up most prominently. Also, if your website's not mobile friendly, that's probably what's happened to it, and I hope everybody in this room is going responsible for mobile friendly. I'm not going to, if you're not, there's going to be problems for you down the road if there already hasn't been. Content shock is a term that gets thrown around a lot, and I'll just go ahead and say this. If you're worried about content shock, which highlights the oversaturation of content, that means you have not done a good enough job of building an audience and moving that to a community. But what this highlighted last year was the amount of content that was being produced exceeded our attention, exceeded it increased at a rate at which we can't keep up. But we aren't all trying to consume the exact same content. If we're going to websites or we're following brands that are important to us, we're not following every website. So I like this, but what I really liked it for was it highlighted this. Most content gets no links. And links is the bedrock of content marketing. It's the bedrock of SEO. No matter what your goal is, for example, on a content lawyer for your goal for content, the goal for your brand online is to show up high in the SERPs, and the best way to do that is links. So I think that's illustrative when people talk about how many words your content should be, instead of focusing on the depth and breadth of content or how good the content is overall. Most content that gets shared is not getting links, and that's because the vast majority, 75% gets no links, but 99% is absolute crap. And that's the biggest problem. Also, this is a huge thing. Rich answers begin to pop up more frequently. So if you can become the definitive answer, which I'm going to talk about later, so you started seeing these rich answer boxes that would show up and definitively answer the question that you had. So you didn't have to dig into some website. And so this is Google scraping of another website's content to provide what they think is the best answer for this query. And it keeps you from having to go somewhere else. This also highlights an opportunity, and this is where we're really going as for an industry, where we have to be thinking, no matter how big or small our brand, we have to think in terms of becoming a definitive answer. Also, UX became a first world priority, although not for everybody. This is actually a really live site that I found. I cannot imagine, I hope the conversion rate on this page is atrocious, because if that's your UX, your website deserves to die a slow, painful death. I'm not saying the brand does, I'm just saying, I say no more, but UX is a priority. I mean, we've thought and we know about things like bounce rate, but when you look at things like bounce rate and pogo sticking, where somebody clicks off your result and goes to another result, and how that impacts you in the SERPs, how that impacts you from Google's eyes, is a huge deal. You want to give people as few choices to make on the web page as possible, and I have no idea what choice I would make on this website. So, 5 big trends shaping digital marketing in 2016. RankBrain, and many of us have heard about this, and this is Google's new machine learning algorithm. There's a lot of misinformation around this. The key is you cannot optimize for RankBrain. Basically, what it does is Google has always said that 15 to 25% of the content that's the queries that are put in the Google search box are indecipherable. They're new. And so RankBrain allows them to, when you put something new in the search box, De Niro, I talked about yesterday with heat. So I put in, I misspelled as many words as I could in this, and it found Robert De Niro and Val Kilmer, and then singled out Heat. Those are the types of queries that RankBrain was designed for. So if you're optimizing for that, that means you're going to be putting a bunch of jumble in there. RankBrain's designed to help you. It's not something you can optimize for. So obviously you want to continue to produce the best content possible and not think in terms of, okay, how can I create RankBrain friendly content. It is interesting though that recently one of the Google search scientists said, he admitted, it's the first time ever supposedly that anybody's seen this or heard this, that the 3 most important things for SEO are links, content, and now RankBrain. And that highlights how important RankBrain will be for them going forward. We've known content and links, and that's not telling us anything new. It would be different if he said something specific about content or something specific about links, but all links are not created equal, same as all content's not created equal. So how do we optimize for that? So if you're thinking like a web searcher and hiking boots is your main keyword, a simple thing you can do is think in terms of what other intent would they have around those keywords. And intent's a huge deal. We've known with the Google Hummingbird algorithm from 2 years ago that Google's doing a lot more with intent. So it's not just about the exact match keywords. Think in terms of the intent around that keyword. And so a simple way to optimize for this, and REI does an amazing job. REI's philosophy, and I got to talk to their first SEO last year. He used to work for, he still works at Facebook. And he talked about REI's philosophy is just trying to be an amazing resource for anybody who would encounter a product that they sell. So I come to this page for hiking boots, but they don't know enough about me yet. So they're like, is it men's or women in various types of hiking boots? How much information is it you need to know? So think about it. You come to this web page for one specific thing, but you have all these needs that they don't yet know. So it looks like this to them, not to you. Obviously, that'd be very disconcerting. So these are all the actions you could take on that page. Even though if we go back, this is what you land on. And so that highlights intent. They don't know enough about you yet. The same, you don't know enough about someone yet. And so we have to think in terms of having a specific strategy for each page, optimizing for one single thing. So if somebody comes to that page for hiking boots, you don't have to have men's and women's and all that in the actual content, but you should have links to that on the page. You should have related articles to that on the page. You should have links to other content that's off your site. But the key, optimize for one specific thing on each page. And if you look at the example I used a minute ago, he or she was doing anything but by having all that information in which would seem like misinformation to someone who would encounter that page. This is a very, very important thing. This comes over into on-page optimization, and is very, very key because even if you're just, quote unquote, just a blogger and you're just trying to find your sea legs, so to speak, thinking in terms of, okay, I'm going to answer one question, but I'm going to hold out hope that people who have this one question will have all these needs around it, and that's key. But let's not confuse them. Optimize for one simple thing. Another is mobile and voice dominance. I totally missed this one. I know mobile's a big thing. I know I have my phone in my hand a lot. I realize how distracting that's been and continues to be. I try not to grab it first thing in the morning. But I didn't realize how big a deal it was. We've been hearing for a long time that mobile has eclipsed desktop. That's not that big a deal. But it is significant when you consider there's still a lot of people who have desktop. And be ye not deceived, most people who are on mobile have desktop open. And that's very, very interesting. Frequently people have desktop open, they'll be on mobile, and they may have a phablet or tablet nearby. So obviously you want to optimize for mobile, but don't neglect desktop as well. But the biggest thing is when people are on mobile, voice is becoming huge. I totally miss that because I don't use voice. I found it a little annoying when I get voice text messages. It's confusing to me. It's like, what do I do? I don't want to interact to that degree. I want them, I'm used to words, but people are increasingly using it. I mean, 51%, 55% of teens, overwhelmingly, no matter what age group. The most interesting part is what they're looking for, and this highlights an opportunity. Obviously, asking for directions, and as a brand, that lets you know they're likely in your area and they're looking for your product or service. And so it's important to have those optimized pages, which we'll talk about. So directions reign supreme. And no matter what business you're in or what brand you have, you're still a local business. Whether you're a Starbucks and I'm walking downtown and there's 20 coffee shops, and I'm saying, you know, I need a meeting spot or I need coffee near me, you have to focus on local intent. And so we'll talk about this in a second, but that's huge. One of the biggest things you can do to impact mobile voice, people on the go, is focus on your reviews. When I'm in a new place like I have been this week, and I want a good beer, I want a good burger, one of the first things I do is I do searches near me. The first thing I look at is I want a restaurant or a beer place that has a minimum rating of 4.1, 4.2. I want the rating to be over 4. Even if you're an amazing restaurant that comes highly recommended, if I do not see reviews, I will not go there. I feel like there's just not a critical mass of people who have used the product or service. And it's so simple to get reviews. One of the things you can do, and I have this link in the document, is you can have a simple request form, request to leave a review, which is just a simple card. You can't ask this in the store. You can't have a tablet or desktop and have them do it in your store. Google will penalize you for that. But you can hand them a form and say, well, you give me a review. A better thing to do, because people forget, is to optimize for that. Is to say, if you give me a review and you bring this back, I'll give you 25% off, or I'll give you a cupcake, I'll give you a soda with your next meal. That optimizes for that experience, because I know myself, as passionate as I am about leaving reviews or people giving reviews, I often forget. So that's something incredibly simple. I'm diving more into the local SEO world, and this is one of the things that when you talk about local citations, what has relevance to people for a local brand, an area that you can win in is reviews. Another thing is local optimized pages. What frustrates me is a lot of big brands are dominating local search. And what that has to do with, if you're a local brand, you should be creating local specific pages. So this is a bounce house place, and they have a location in my city, but they also have them all across the country. So on their website, it's a national brand, they have a page for each location. And that's huge. And you can do the same. Another is to become a 10X brand. There's no way around it. And I know we hear a lot about that. That's becoming the definitive resource. And I know I repeat that over and over, but that's huge. Wherever you are, wherever you're going to be, wherever people interact with you, you need to be the best resource. The way to think about that is if I'm Renell Smith is selling fishing shoes, and you encounter me on this page, who are you going to go to? Bass Pro Shops, or me, you're going to go to the brand that you know, that you're familiar with. And so we have to think in those terms. And 10X is basically this. You can take a picture of this, you can remember this, but basically it comes down to being the best at whatever you endeavor to do. So if it's a piece of content, think about how can it could be 10 times better than anything you've experienced online, 10 times better than anything else that anybody would encounter. Just think about being better. The 10 part can be very confusing. Focus on how can this be better and different than what I'm seeing. If you're in a vertical, if you're producing a piece of content that's typically text, think about video, think about images, think about memes, think about GIFs. So try to do something better, but also focus on different. I don't like better, unfortunately. I think it doesn't share enough information. So the key components of 10X brands, over-deliver at every touch point. I've talked a little bit about that. So anywhere anybody encounters you, that you're gonna have the best experience. Like I made the example yesterday about the Lowe's Hotel. That's really, really simple. If we just get our mind around that, I'm gonna be the best at whatever it is I do. This next thing I think is huge. It's huge for me. It's also huge for a number of marketers that I'm interacting with. But focus less on how this content is great for your brand. So less about good for brand and more on value to the audience. So less about value to me. How can I create something that's value to the audience? A lot of times we go into it thinking about, okay, these are the conversions I need to have, but you're not going to get conversions if your content's crap or the experience is horrific. So we have to move from brand to audience. And I like to say, move from content, which hopefully you're talking to one person, so content to one-to-one connection, to audience, then to community. Because ultimately, if you're not building a community, your brands that are going to eat your lunch pretty soon. Another one, think about curating content. Part of being the definitive resource isn't just about you producing the best content, it's also sharing the best content. And so this is just a curated piece of content, but look at the information they give you. They share with you how it was done, they share additional resources. When you think about curated content from now on, I know for me, I'm going to go there. I'm going to be like, okay, they have this wide breadth and depth of curated content, and they're it's research focused, it's research backed. And I'm not going to look to go any further than them. And I trust this brand now because of this. So it's getting those little things right. Build a personal and personable brand. You need a person. You need a thing. People are not going to interact with your content over time if there's not a person associated with it. They're not going to build brand loyalty to a blog page. You need a person that goes beyond the entity. You need a brand spokesperson. This is Roger Moz's little robot, so to speak. And it's amazing how many people come to MozCon, go from all over the country to interact with him over people, the same way they do with brands. So think about how you can have a personality, a person inside your brand who can help you move things along. Another one is, audience is your protection, so to speak. And I talked about this yesterday. If people become loyal to you or loyal to your personality, they tend not to look elsewhere. They may gaze at the landscape, but they'll always be more loyal to you if you continue to focus on their care and feeding, so to speak. And that's a huge, huge deal, is think about how we can overserve them. A great example of that was, remember the sound went out for Adele, and I love the response. I can imagine if this had been Kanye at the Grammys or the American Music Award, wherever this was, that he would have been attacked at the Grammys. But for her fans looked out for her. And that's that loyal audience she has. She doesn't have to worry. They're always going to have her back. And I love, love, love this response. I can't imagine the people that wouldn't have happened for her, but she's always nurturing her brand. She's always nurturing her audience. Adele seems to make things not about her. And I think that's what fosters that loyalty that she continued to receive. The last one is just being the best answer. The key is to focus on not having the top piece of content. Your domain may not allow you to ever have the #1 result. But if you can seek to be the best answer, as you can see here, this content appears above the organic results, right below the ads. Most viewers, 99.9% of viewers, would not know that from this. So you're the top organic result. All they had to do was answer this, candy pecans recipe, and they're the top result. And the way to do that is to think in-depthly, to do these simple things. So identify something that people in your vertical want to know, and provide a direct answer as succinctly and as best as you can. And this is something you can iterate over time. Just focus on being the best answer. And again, focus more on depth than breadth. That candy pecans recipe, they could have had 25,000 words, and they likely wouldn't have been able to show up any higher. I mean, the #1 result is the #1 result. And that's actually result 0. They have no competition. As long as that answer is there and over time they update it, they don't have to worry about the #1 result being above them. They're above the #1 result. And so that is huge. This is where I'd like to see us focus, is if we can identify in our vertical for our brand, what is the #1 thing people want to know, and then answer those questions. And so I said a second ago, get good at what you do. That's what Almanar said. What I like to say is focus on get good at what you specifically do. Don't focus on what everybody else should be doing, what everybody else says you should be doing. Focus on what you should be doing, and then focus on being the best at it. Thank you.